Ever since getting traded to the Dallas Mavericks, Spencer Dinwiddie has been absolutely going off. So far with 8 games played with the Mavericks, Spencer is averaging around 18 points per game, and especially recently he had a great game against the Sacramento Kings where he had a 36-point performance on efficient shooting as well. And overall, Spencer just looks like a perfect fit with this Dallas Mavericks roster. But quickly before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports, I make opinionative NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it.
Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetics.
Originally, when the Dallas Mavericks traded for Spencer Dinwiddie at the trade deadline, there was a ton of question marks that came along with that. The first question about the deal was it the right move to move on from KP? Because although there was a bunch of issues with KP in terms of his injury history, his contract, there was also some reports that he wasn't necessarily a great fit in the locker room. Although there were a bunch of different things that were negatives about KP, at the end of the day, it's undeniable that KP is such a talented player, and if he could really figure everything out, he could be a great player. And we saw that early on in his Knicks career where he was playing fantastic NBA basketball. Now, in my personal opinion, I think the Mavericks were right to move on from KP. There was too many negatives involved with him, but at the time there certainly were some question marks on if that was the right move. Now, the next question was how well would the two guys that the Mavericks picked up in Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans fit in with the Dallas Mavericks? There was also a concern of the contract of these two new guys in the Mavericks, especially Bertans, who's been having a down year so far this year. But of course, Dinwiddie has a decently sized contract as well. Now, of course, they were getting rid of KP, who had a humongous contract, but overall, there was just a bunch of different question marks and concerns at the time of the trade. But now, a few weeks out of this trade, it's been pretty clear that this deal has been an absolute home run for the Mavericks. As a team, the Mavericks have been playing a much higher level of NBA basketball, and they've been one of the hottest teams in the NBA as of late. And as I mentioned before, Spencer Dinwiddie individually has been playing fantastic basketball ever since getting to Dallas. But now let's talk about why this was such a great trade for the Mavericks. So first, let's look at Spencer's game. Let's look at what he does well individually. So starting with Spencer's three-point shooting ability, this is certainly an ability that he has, but he's not necessarily a fantastic three-point shooter. Of course, he has the ability to space the floor for a guy like Luka and hit that catch and shoot three-point jump shot, but what Spencer does a lot more effectively from that three-point range is when he has the ball in his hands and he's either crossing over into a three-point shot, doing a nice little sidestep or step back, or even a nice pull-up three-point jump shot in the pick and roll or pick and pop situation. From that mid-range area, Spencer's a much better shooter in my opinion. Of course, he has a nice pull-up mid-range jump shot, also has a very nice floater within his game, which I mentioned in a lot of my videos, but basically for ball handlers, they need to have that floater within their game, especially if they run the pick and roll / pick and pop a lot, because those opportunities to put up some floaters will always be there in those situations. Now, although Spencer doesn't necessarily do this very often, he certainly does have the ability to hit that post turnaround fadeaway, but most importantly, from that mid-range area, he's just very crafty and does a great job at drawing fouls and just taking some awkward shots from that mid-range area, but he hits a lot of those shots as well, so it's definitely great to see. But now talking about Spencer's ability to drive all the way to the basket, so of course Spencer isn't necessarily one of the most athletic players in the NBA, and he doesn't have the ability to dunk over any player, but with that being said, he is very crafty. Similar to his mid-range shooting ability, he's very crafty once driving all the way to the basket, at finishing with either hand, either his left or right hand, and just does a great job at hanging in the air long enough to outlast whatever defender is guarding him and put up a nice little layup around them. Spencer also uses his strength pretty effectively in order to get those N1 finishes at the basket as well, and overall his driving and finishing ability is certainly very good. Now, in terms of his passing and playmaking ability, he's not necessarily going to need to worry about it that much, especially due to the fact that he's playing in Dallas now with Luka, but of course it certainly is an ability that he has. He's not necessarily fantastic at it, but he certainly has the ability to do so. But really where his passing and playmaking ability would become a lot more effective is when Luka Doncic is not playing on the court and Spencer Dinwiddie is running the show. And of course, as I mentioned, the fact that he does have a decent passing and playmaking ability gives head coach Jason Kidd the ability to completely run through Spencer at times as well, just giving him that much more flexibility. But now that we actually went over all his individual capabilities, how does that actually fit in with the Dallas Mavericks, and how has he been such a perfect fit for them? So there's a few different reasons in my opinion why Spencer is such a great fit in Dallas. So the first reason is how well Spencer plays off of a guy in Luka. So I think we all know at this point that Luka Doncic is one of the best players in the NBA, but at the same time he's somewhat of a difficult player to play with in the sense that he needs the ball in his hands 99% of the time. And a player that maybe also needed the ball in their hands a little bit as well wouldn't necessarily play well with a guy in Luka because both of them would need the ball a lot of the time. But when you talk about a guy in Spencer Dinwiddie, he's a fantastic blend of a player that doesn't necessarily need the ball in his hands all the time and plays very well off ball, but at the same time also has the ability to facilitate and score for himself as well. Because although Luka does need the ball in his hands 90% of the time, one of the big issues for the Mavericks in the past in the playoffs was the fact that Luka was the main ball handler, was the fact that Luka was basically the only ball handler and they didn't necessarily have any other players on the team that could effectively run the offense or even create their own shot. Of course, they did have a guy in Jalen Brunson who could do a lot of those things, especially now. He's gotten a lot better this season, of course, and he certainly did have somewhat of an ability in the past. And also, of course, Tim Hardaway Jr. and Seth Curry had the ability to create their own shot when Seth was on the Mavericks. But I just think adding another guy in Spencer Dinwiddie who also has the capability to create for himself and others at times as well, it's just such a huge benefit for Luka. And I think we've seen it for the Mavericks this season, how much better they've gotten ever since they got Spencer on this roster. And touching upon another factor for why Spencer Dinwiddie is such a perfect fit with the Mavericks and Luka especially is, of course, as I mentioned before, when Luka is not on the court, having a guy like Spencer who clearly has the capability to create for himself and others, maybe coming off your bench or just mismatching their minutes, is just such a great benefit to the Mavericks as a whole because it gives an opportunity for Luka to get some rest. And when Luka is getting rest, the Mavericks aren't necessarily losing the lead that they already have or aren't necessarily getting blown out when Luka's not on the court. Having a guy like Spencer play with the second unit, for example, is clearly a player that's capable of running the offense and just being the main focus of that lineup. Now, although the sample size for Spencer Dinwiddie in Dallas hasn't been all that big, I think it's pretty clear early on that the early signs certainly are positive for him in Dallas. And in my opinion, going forward, especially in the playoffs, I think the Mavericks are going to be a much better team now with Spencer than they would have been if they didn't make this trade. But we'll see what happens going forward. It's going to be very interesting to see how Spencer Dinwiddie and the Mavericks mesh as time goes on, and especially once it comes down to the playoffs. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you guys think Spencer Dinwiddie getting added to the Dallas Mavericks is a perfect fit, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out, guys.
Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetics. Hope you can't go where I'm headed.